So it is 1 o'clock, and if you've worked with me before, you know this. I like to start on time and end on time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If you just want to let yourself into the room as we do some introductions and get going, that'd be great. And then mute yourself, and you all have control over your screen and unmute. As long as everybody plays fair, you'll have those permissions as we go forward, just like our teachers do in the classroom. So thanks for being here. As we go forth, just before we begin, just a few things to think about is just stay muted unless you have something to say. If you want to join the conversation at any point, just put your name over in the chat box and just put the word share, and we'll monitor that and we'll get you in the conversation. The other one is pose questions. That's time for you to collaborate with each other, for us to collaborate with each other. Ideas, comments, any of those types of things you want over there. And then keep this in mind. If you need a thought partner at any time, give me a shout, a confidential ear, whatever. I am a coach and a trained coach, so whatever you say to me stays with me. So if you ever just need somebody to blurt things out at or share some confidential pieces with and brainstorm with you, let me know. Or ideas on how MASSP can support you, just let us know, either myself or anybody on the MASSP team, and we'll make sure that we get those pieces in place for you to ensure your success and our shared success. Our agenda is as simple as this today. It's a welcome and an overview. We're going to hear from a panelist of 8 people today, our colleagues. We're not experts, none of us are, but we just have different ideas and different experiences based on those that we engage with. So keep that in mind as we go forth. Also, don't judge yourself. Be comfortable with what you're currently doing and say what's next. You know your staff, you know the culture, you know timing is important and a pivotal point with everything that we do. So just pay attention to the culture and the vibe and plan your things forward. The other one is just our outcome. It's how are you adapting, or how will you adapt the continuity of learning plan as you're with it now and going into the future years or in the future weeks or the future months. What was brought up last time is some people are starting to lose interest. The novelty is wearing off. So how do you keep that going, especially when the weather starts getting nicer? And then thinking forward of what might this look like in August, or if you had snow days. So some things to think about is what's in your plan is an expectation from all. These are just from the field that we've been hearing in the last week or so, just to keep in mind. So if somebody isn't abiding by that plan, how do you get them on the plan? Because otherwise parents are going to be calling you or the central office and complaining. So how do we get everybody on board with the other piece? Also, those plans can be modified, but we've got to seek feedback first and then go through the process of modification if that does take place. And it might need to as the year goes on in the next few weeks as you start to figure out what's working and what's not working. The other one is sometimes we have to have difficult conversations. If somebody isn't living up to the expectation, whether it's a staff member, a parent, a student, we have to have those difficult conversations. If you ever need somebody to role play with one of those with you, give me a holler and we can do that. It's usually like a 5-minute conversation and it's a framework to play within. So don't be afraid to have them. And if you ever need a partner in role play, give a holler. The other one we have to be knowledgeable about, and it was stated last week, is there's always going to be praise for what you're doing, and there's always going to be somebody that's going to push back. Somebody that's happy, somebody that's not happy. It's just part of our role as a leader, and it's going to come at you from all different angles. So just know it's part of the job. The other one to keep in mind then is presume positive intentions. So the person isn't angry at you. Usually it's something else that's going on in their world that we have to be conscious of. So it's usually not against you, and we can't take it personally. And they're acting for certain reasons. Usually it's self-protection. It might be fear, it might be anger or anxiety, whatever might be going on in life. The other one is, what might this plan look like as you go into May or the end of May? Next August, if you've got to make adaptations, what could that look like? Or even for inclement weather days coming forward. I've had a lot of conversations this week with middle school leaders about the 5th graders coming into their buildings and then the 8th graders going out, and what could those possibilities being look like? Knowing that you're in the middle of the 2 of those, one of the things we came to consensus around with those that I work with is, as middle school leaders, let's create the plan and send it down and plan and send it up versus having people send it to us. Be the first one in and get feedback on that. So if you ever want to talk through those things, give a holler. The other one is just simply this, is to think about what are you noticing about yourself or learning about yourself, about others, and about your school system, because this is the time to reflect as well and say, where do we go next? The other piece came out today. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it was from the Bridge. And here's some information to think about what they found out. So if you want this link, we'll send this PowerPoint to you as well as a recording of this. Here's what parents in Michigan are thinking. Here's the first one. And I'm not going to read these to you because I know you can read. So sometimes we just need reassurance of what we're doing is the right work. And these pretty much sum this up. That one might be important for us to pay attention to as the start of the school year as well. What parents are requesting. So again, we'll send this to you, we'll get this to you, but you can also look up the bridge, and they sent that out today. Here's our focus for our questions for today, is how's it going with the initial implementation? From what you thought was gonna happen to what your current realities are, and what might need to be changed. So here's some questions that our panel might speak around, is how is it working? How do you know? Teachers, parents, students? How are you monitoring, or how do you plan to monitor the implementation? That's your infrastructure, accessibility, FAPE, attendance. What needs to be rethought, or how do you adapt? And then who needs to be part of that conversation? It might be accessibility, it might be around curriculum, grading, schedule, communication, even training that our staffs might need. And then finally, what are some lessons learned that might inform future endeavors as we're going forth? Because if we have a secondary wave or we have substitute teachers, inclement weather days, all of those pieces. So our panelists are just gonna go one by one, and they're just gonna talk about any of these or all of these questions, usually about 5 to 7 minutes. So here is our panel, and we'll introduce them, and then we're gonna give them the floor. They will unmute themselves, and then we'll go from there. Our first one is Joe, and he's gonna be from Troy. The next person is Michelle, and she's from Walled Lake. We're gonna have Eric, he's from Holly, Keith from DeWitt, Tim from Grayling, Brad and Bill, both from Northview, and then Michael from California. So that's where our panelist is. After each of them gets to share, we'll open up to an open forum. So again, if you want to share, just put your name over in the chat box, follow share, and we'll go from there. So if you would like to, please, Joe, will you get us kicked off?
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. Happy to do so. Can everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up? Okay. So I'm at Larson Middle School in the Troy School District. And we've kind of had 2 phases. We, during the initial period, we had 3 weeks prior to our spring break. Our spring break was the first week in April, and we had really that initial period where we cobbled together a plan and really focus more on enrichment and not on kind of moving forward with new content. We are very fortunate to have, to be a one-to-one school. All of our kids have iPads, and we have had that in place for a number of years. So the staff are probably pretty comfortable with that. We have a learning management system that we've used called Schoology that has been very helpful to us as we have attempted to kind of shift things over. So again, the first few weeks were enrichment, and then we had our spring break week, and then we decided to do a planning week, and where our teacher teams got together to decide how we wanted to handle the last 8 or 9 weeks or so in the school year. And we're now in our second week of that plan, which has a lot more structure to it than we had prior to the break. We have content at the middle level. We do it a little different at the middle level than we do at the high school in Troy. So we do it by content area. So kids have basically 2 content area classes per day, and then teachers will have office hours in the afternoon. Most of our staff are using either Teams or Zoom to accomplish that. What's working and how do we know? Schoology lets us run an analytics report. We can see that around 98% of our kids have at least been on Schoology. It doesn't mean that they have turned their assignments in or done everything their teacher has asked them to do, but we're able to at least see that they are going into Schoology and accessing some of the materials. I should back up and say that the first 3 weeks prior to spring break were really about us identifying who needed internet support, internet access. Obviously, just because they have an iPad doesn't mean anything at all if they don't have any way to connect. So our tech department did a lot of that legwork during those 3 weeks. So we're pretty confident that all of our kids, or the vast majority of our kids, have internet access. So we're checking that. We have asked teachers to be that first connection with kids. If they're not seeing anyone engaging in the work or submitting any assignments, we want them to first reach out to the kids personally with a message of encouragement. We are not doing any grading in Troy. We are all credit, no credit for the remainder of the school year. And so really our philosophy, our overarching goal is to give every kid credit in every single class that they have. That's what we want to have happen. And so having that conversation with our teachers up front, as all of you know, you have staff who have, kind of a broad spectrum of expectations for kids. Some, I think probably wanted to just keep moving forward business as usual, and that's just not a reality. So we had to kind of temper expectations a little bit about what we wanted. So again, the teachers are reaching out to kids first, reaching out to parents second, personally, because I'll say I have two boys of my own who kind of pulled the wool over my eyes a little bit and said, oh, I'm really keeping track of everything. And then I got an email from one of their teachers that said, hey, they're not doing the job. So for me as a parent, then I had to sort of jump in and supplement a little bit. But that has really helped kind of move things along, getting the parents a little more deeply involved, because as we know, our parents are all over the spectrum. Some of them are first responders, and they're out working all day long, and they're, not able to provide their kids with a ton of support during the day. Some are at home and still can't provide their kids with a lot of support during the day. So we know we have, a wide variety of that. So, it's been, I would say, I think it's been relatively successful. We're not at the point where at the end of this week, we're supposed to get a report from teachers about kids that they have reached out to personally, and they have spoken to parents and haven't gotten anything back at all. And then at that point, their teachers are going to be referring those to our office staff. And so our counselors will, and have already been reaching out, but we'll be reaching out a little more personally. And then administration here at Larson as well will be reaching out to try to figure out why kids are in. We know that there are some parents that have already told their kids, you don't have to do anything, and have sort of given them implied permission to disengage. And that really makes our job very difficult to do, but we're still going to have those conversations with all those parents, and we're still going to try to, put our best foot forward and provide the best experience that we can during these remaining weeks. It's going to need refining. I still, in terms of the praise and the pushback, I've gotten lots of both. We have parents that think we're not giving enough work to their kids, and we have parents that think it's too much and it's overwhelming their kids. So obviously, us as the building leaders are sort of in the middle of that and trying to kind of steer the ship through that feedback. So I think we're about right. I think the amount of work we're expecting from kids is pretty reasonable. It's 1 to 2 hours per week in their core areas, and then an hour per elective class that they have. So I think it's about right, but I think again, that's going to need to be tweaked. Rethinking, adapting. We have a group of teachers and administrators that are getting together every couple of weeks to kind of just do progress checks. Are they seeing the same thing? Just because I'm not getting, or I'm getting certain communications, it doesn't mean that's the reality for everybody else. So just continuing to have meetings, more and more. I've never had so many Zoom meetings in 1 week. I thought I had a lot last week, and I had almost twice the number this week. So it just kind of keeps rolling on. And for me, some of the lessons learned, I am amazed at how much I miss the social interaction with my coworkers, and obviously just seeing the kids every day and having conversations and finding out what's going on in their lives, and the value that structure provides to all of us to just kind of go through our class periods each day. I think a lot of our kids are missing that, and but we're trying to be positive, and we're trying to push forward and do the best job and be that source of light and positivity for our community, because we know there's a lot of suffering going on across the spectrum. So just those are my thoughts so far.
Thanks, Joe. I think you answered the question that was in the chat box, but the expectation for students learning each day, what does that look like? The volume of time.
We ask teachers, Yeah, we as in terms of time. So as I mentioned, kids in their core areas will have 2 hours of max of activities planned for the week. And that includes, the teacher's instruction and the time that it would take for a kid to complete the assignments. So that's maximum for the week. And so like on Mondays, kids will have math from 9 to 10, and they'll have social studies from roughly 10 to 11. That sometimes the teachers have live lessons during that time. Sometimes it's a recorded video. But that's sort of the placeholder for kids to work on math. And that repeats itself on Thursday, and then English and science are on Tuesdays and Fridays, and then Wednesdays are reserved for electives.
Thanks so much. And if you have questions afterwards, if you want the email addresses of our panelists, a few of you emailed last time wanting that, I'm sure that they won't mind that. Just email me and I'll get those to you. So thanks for that, Joe, for sharing. Michelle, would you unmute yourself? I think I just did for you. Unmute yourself and you are ready to share. Thanks so much.
Is everyone able to hear me okay? Hello, everyone. Just thumbs up if you can hear me. Maybe? Yeah, okay, great. So yes, I'm from Walled Lake Schools, and we are a large district and have 4 middle schools in our district. And I think that we're similar in a lot of ways to what Joe mentioned Troy is doing. We too had the 3 weeks prior to our spring break focused on enrichment, spending that time really getting connected with families, getting families online, providing Chromebooks and things like that to families that needed those resources. And we as a district decided to be consistent with the platform that we were using, which was Google Classroom. So right away when we left school on March 13th, that following Monday was a professional development day for our staff. We got everybody on Google Classroom. We had everybody, creating classes if they had not previously used Google Classroom. And then we spent those 3 weeks providing daily opportunities for students in every single class. With the new continuity of learning plan, we changed our weekly schedule quite a bit and have broken it down more into an hourly structure based on the class schedule that they have normally in their building. So we have a 6-period day at our school and in our district for the middle schools. And so we're rotating through those 6 periods Monday through Thursday. So on Monday, periods 1st, 2nd, and 3rd hour will have opportunities for live meetings. And then Tuesday is hours 4, 5, and 6. And then that rotates back Wednesday, Thursday. And Friday has really been reserved for enrichment opportunities posted. And that is also protected time for our staff to do collaborative planning with their grade level or their content area, and collaborative staff meeting time on those days as well. Our teachers are also offering office hours Monday through Thursday. So we have a variety of things happening, but it's all happening through Google Classroom. And I think that has been beneficial for our families, just having one platform to learn and know how to navigate no matter what grade level their child might be in, or, we have a lot of families with children in multiple grade levels across multiple buildings. So that consistency, I think, has been beneficial. We've also received lots of praise and pushback from families, and are struggling with trying to find that happy medium for everyone, because for some it's not nearly enough, and for others it's way too much. So just reminding everybody to, give themselves permission to do what they can, and, just everybody's doing their best. In terms of implementation and how we're monitoring things like that, teachers are really that first line of defense with students and families related to engagement. On a weekly basis, we have the teachers making contact with students who have not participated, communicating with families, and then providing that information to administration and building team to then reach out additionally. Most of our students are connected, almost all are, but the participation is where we see that, that wide range in terms of the weekly engagement. Our district also provided paper packets to families who might not have had the technology or have just simply acknowledged that the technology is too overwhelming for them. So we are doing mailings bi-weekly and having those returned to the district at a drop-off location. We've adjusted a few things as we go. The grading at the middle school level was pass-fail, but we've done a blend with all of the learning that took place prior to our shutdown and the participation and quality completion of work that will happen between now and the end of the school year. And we've made some adjustments more at the high school level because there was a lot of pushback about going to a pass-fail. There were many families that really wanted to have the option to choose a letter grade, so they've adjusted that, and that did impact us at the middle school level with some of those classes that are offered at our 8th grade level that count for a high school Michigan Merit Curriculum requirement. So we're continuing to learn, continuing to adjust. A lot of my work has been supporting staff and their adjustment. I have fantastic teachers at our school who put so much effort into everything that they're doing, but are really trying to balance and manage, their own lives and the stress and the new technology and troubleshooting. So those Fridays are really important for us to have time to collaborate with each other and kind of support each other and troubleshoot together. And the consistency of the platform and the content that's being delivered is really beneficial for that mutual support that takes place. As a district, we've started to talk about the fall and what that may look like, but there's still just so many unknowns related to what our position is going to be that we're not in a place where we've made any major decisions. I think going through this process, we definitely are in a much better place with the resources that we have in place and the learning that has taken place over the past few weeks, that if we do have to be in another virtual situation in the fall, we're in a much better place to do so. But that's a huge conversation with a lot of unknowns that we just haven't made decisions about yet. So that's what I have. A lot of the things that Joe mentioned are very similar for us as well. So that's it.
Thanks, Michelle. You're going to notice, folks, over in the right-hand side in the chat box there's some questions about what platform people are using, and some other questions about providers with those that need hotspots and such. If you have answers to those, would you mind just responding in the chat box? Because what we'll do afterwards is send you all of the responses that are also in the chat box over there. So if you have responses, please do that. So Michelle, thanks so much. Eric, if you're ready, go ahead and unmute yourself and we're ready to hear and learn.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I think you'll probably hear a lot of similarities between Joe's plan, what we just heard from Walled Lake, and really everything else that we've heard from previous weeks. So I'll just kind of go into some of the details that we're experiencing here in Holly Middle School in Holly, Michigan. My AP Haley Street's on here too, so I've asked her to unmute herself. She might be able to hop in and provide even more detail in some of these areas, because we've, while we're working together, have done some dividing and conquering in different departments and areas to make sure we can give everyone our best attention. So one of the things in that first topic, what's working and how do we know? For us, we've already made a shift in some communication. We started with emails and phone calls, and our phone call acceptance rate has been really abysmal. We have adopted Google Voice, and we're going straight to voicemail in some cases because it's an unrecognized number. Some of our teachers who don't have Google Voice are making calls from their personal phones, blocking numbers, and cell phones won't accept that. So we started saying, well, how about we try texting with our Google Voice numbers? And we have had really tremendous improvement in response rates from our families. It's allowed us to enter into two-way conversations that we were getting stymied with before. And some of the text messages are leading us into then, hey, how about I give you a call on the phone and we can walk through this a little bit more. This week, this is our second full week of our program in Holly. And we had about 70 kids out of 700 who we determined were non-engagers, meaning that they didn't check in, didn't turn anything in 3 or more of their 4 core classes. So we started reaching out to them this week, 50% return rate on a text, and we only had a 17% rate on return of a phone call. So Monday, we did the text. Wednesday, we flip-flopped it. If we texted you on Monday, we tried calling you on Wednesday. If we called you on Monday, we tried texting you on Wednesday. And we're happy to report we only haven't heard from 10 of our kids across the building. So that's been a lot of legwork on our front end. This was our counselors and our administrators doing most of it this week. We're going to be turning over those conversations to our homeroom teachers. Next week, we've created a spreadsheet document. Got a tech teacher who really wanted to dive in. So we're sending out through the document. Teachers are just checking non-engagers for their subject for the week. On Monday morning, he's going to push form emails out to anybody who has a check mark in a core class. And then if they have 3 or more check marks, the homeroom teacher makes the phone call then on that Monday to try to get our students engaged. But similar to what we've heard from Troy and Walled Lake, quality of engagement is very different than just participating. And we've developed a kind of a system for that I'll get to here in a moment. For us, Haley and I created a distance learning website through Google Sites for our families, and we've really been pushing that. Trying to create a one-stop shop. I'm posting my video announcements up there each week, different forms that they can fill out to see counselors. Our counselors have our own page. Our social worker has developed a page there to really try to support our families. So there's been positive feedback on that, but the traffic isn't what I would like it to see. A lot of people are getting frustrated and taking their frustrations to social media as opposed to, going to where maybe they could find their answers. So each week I try to remind people of that. I walk them through that on my screencast. This is how you can access it. This is what's on the page. So hopefully familiarity will breed familiarity, I hope there. Our parents have addressed that our schedule is manageable. It's very similar to what you've heard. Monday, Wednesday, math and social studies. Tuesday, Thursday, ELA and science. Friday, we call it Fun Fridays. Our teachers curated a variety of different game type sites that go along with their content that students can get on with and play. And our Fridays are set aside for our department meetings. For Haley and myself, it's really long days on Fridays. We're in meetings from 9 till 3:30. But that saves time for our teachers. It allows them to have the opportunity to meet during the course of the week as well, knowing that they don't have staff meetings and department meetings and a variety of other things that we're kind of forcing them into. Those have been phenomenal because we get small groups, 6, 7 teachers in our departments, and really have an opportunity to talk through what's working, what's not working. Everybody gets to share ideas. And they've been really beneficial, and the feedback that we've gotten on that in some of our surveys has been really positive too. We're doing wellness checks with our staff periodically, with our students each Friday. Counselors take the results of the wellness survey and then reach out the following week to. We use a mood meter, and blue are really kind of down, sad, depressed type feelings. So we're reaching out to those students. And any student that wants a one-on-one, our counselors are trying to make a touch point with them. Some cases it's tough though, because they need to talk about family situations and they don't always have that privacy. So we're still trying to navigate a good way to address those situations with our counseling department and social workers. Our department meetings, this is going to be our second week where we're doing a department theme day. Last week it was a beach day. We had a lot of fun doing that. So just try to bring a little bit of enjoyment. And one thing that teacher said is like, wow, we actually had to think about what we were wearing today. So thanks for doing that for us. So I thought that was kind of interesting. For monitoring, we have, like I talked about, that student tracker that everyone in the building has access to. We have some running notes along the side as well for students that we have to contact because they're missing 3 or more of their core classes. Our administrators and counselors reach out to those families as well. For us, our district did a wide distribution and hotspot rollout because we are not one-to-one, and we're still not one-to-one. So nothing that we do at Holly Middle School is synchronous because we have families that, yes, they have a device, but that might be being shared by 3 students at different grade levels. So we don't have any set times for anything. Our teachers offer rolling Google Meets during the course of the week for academics, and then also for a homeroom, just like check in, let's play a Kahoot, let's play a Gimbit, let's have a little bit of fun. So we offer those and do those, but nothing standing. So our attendance is really spotty in those. For our special education teachers are really focused on IEP goals and tracking those. And for us academically, since we're not teaching any online lessons, they're able to access, we're using like a Reading Plus program for building reading skills for our students. We're using iReady for math. Both allow students to enter into their zone of proximal development. So they're utilizing the information in those platforms to track IEP goals because almost all of our kids have either a math or a reading IEP goal there. For our staff, we're trying to accommodate by using Screencastify and for instructions. We don't do it 100% across the board. We are doing good faith, I believe, to the best of our ability. And if we're getting some people to reach out individually, we're absolutely trying to accommodate them there. I had a poor girl move in from Thailand about a month before the school shut down with 0 English skills. So that's been certainly a bridge to cross for her. In terms of what have we rethought, I think I've already mentioned communication. We had to rethink because we were not getting responses to our phone messages. I started the Monday morning announcements each week, sending out to our families. What's been awesome is our students have started creating Friday announcements. We used to do student announcements each day, but now they're doing it once a week. Students have a chance to submit, like, pictures of their pets or shout outs to their teachers or shout outs to their family. So we're getting some student voice in that way. And the feedback that we've gotten from that has really been positive. Our families really like seeing that. We post them on our social media sites as well, but that's on our website too. Talked about math and ELA. For science and social studies, it's both good and bad. Our teachers have a lot more freedom to curate and find resources, but they don't have an online program. We're using Google Classroom for everything. But one thing that I noticed that we're going to have to adjust is we certainly need a building-wide format for what does a Google Classroom look like, because some people post here and some people have access here, and it is confusing for our parents, even within one building. I said earlier, we are not doing grades. We are tracking engagement, participation, and continuous learning. So we set our expectations. Students need to complete 2 math lessons a week. They need to spend 60 minutes on the Reading Plus platform. They do 1 lesson of no red ink for editing and grammar skills, and they do 1 journal entry for ELA. For science and social studies, they submit 2 assignments each week to the Google Classroom. So if a student is meeting all learning expectations, they're hitting all those things, we're putting a 2 in our student management system. If they're partially engaging, and partially is a wide range here, then they get a 1. And if there's no engagement at all, we give them a 0. But we're very clear to parents, and we've set it up in our management system. It doesn't calculate grades. It doesn't give a percentage. It's simply a participation tracker. So like Joe said, we're trying to kind of facilitate not being able to pull the wool over the parents' eyes, because I too have a 6th grader in a different district, and everything's going great, Dad. And then he gets an E in Spanish and art after the first week. So it was just kind of interesting for us. Everything we're doing, which is really, I think, great, all feedback driven. So assignments that come in, teachers are just giving feedback, and some students are actually popping back in and adding more sentences. If the teacher's like, hey, why don't you tell me a little bit more about that? Not many, but more than we would have expected. And I think one of the things that we've really been pleasantly surprised about is students that we never saw engagement from are actually engaging. Students that were maybe a little bit of rough and pains for some teachers, they're connecting well over this virtual existence. The other thing that we learned, I see in the chat, LMS systems. I'd love to learn more about Schoology. I've heard something called Study Island. There's a variety of things that if this is something in the fall, because we're not doing synchronous learning, that might be something that we have to explore more, especially if there's different requirements for what learning looks like in the fall versus what it looks like right now. And then when we do get back into the brick and mortar, if we want them to do some things online, I'm really going to encourage our staff to utilize those platforms in the classroom so we can have students kind of had some more ability to use those and not just try to push it onto them, which is a very different situation now because it was emergency based, but to have an opportunity to use those so when they're away from us, we can still use those sort of things.
Thanks, Eric. We appreciate you sharing those things, from student needs to parent needs to good old Facebook, going into what we're trying to do. Let's go ahead and Keith, if you want to unmute yourself and join on in, we're ready for you.
Thanks, Steve, and hi, everyone. It's great to be a part of networking with a lot of middle-level leaders around the state here. I know it's the first time I've been able to join into the Leader2Leader sessions on Thursday afternoon, so I'm excited to learn and already have learned quite a bit from Joe, Michelle, and Eric. So I'll just kind of share a little bit of our story here in DeWitt, and really very similar to what's been shared already in the timeline of things, and that we had a few weeks where we were really just focused once the first the shutdown happened on identifying kind of things going on with students, checking in for wellness, and then really also kind of we did start right away. Our technology department did a great job of launching a survey to kind of gather needs of connectivity and devices the students have. We're not a one-to-one district, but we do have a number of Chromebooks in our buildings in our district. So we did start then, even just before we had officially launched into any of our learning, remote learning. We started handing out Chromebook devices. We've handed out about 400 to 450 throughout the district now, and we'll continue to hand out as need arises. We do have some students that we know don't have connectivity, and it's going to be really difficult to get any connectivity to them given the infrastructure that exists. And we are working on ways to get to that, but also we have there's probably about 7 to 10 now that are on paper packets. So when we officially kind of launched into our continuity of learning plan, we spent a lot of time administratively collaborating, and I would say it's probably been one of the biggest things that I've realized as a pro through all of this is the collaboration that we've had, and it's happened even more so than when we're in person. And I think, for us administratively across the district, since we're split up a little bit too, that was really a collaborative effort, and felt good about that. And then working with teachers collaboratively too through that. But we started, we started 1 week on, I think it was the first week of April. We had spring break just before that, and we started that first week with training for teachers. Google Classroom, again, is our LMS, and we're using that consistently across all of our buildings. Except for the high school, there's a little bit of difference in some of the things because some teachers there had already set up a different platform. But we had already kind of prepped teachers earlier this year. We were trying to get everybody to update their LMS to Google Classroom and Google Sites for their website. So we were on a good track there, and we gave more training from our tech department and building level. And then I worked with our staff to help set up kind of what our guidelines and our minimum expectations would be. And what we landed on, similar to some others, but we're using kind of the idea of two-way communication from a student each week is basically our minimum for each of their classes. But we are set up so that we're doing math, science, and 1 elective class. We have a 6-period day, so students essentially have their 4 required and then 2 electives. And so we have math, science, and 1 elective on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then language arts, social studies, and another elective on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Since we're on trimesters and we had just started into the 3rd trimester, and a lot of our elective classes are trimester based, some of our electives actually are not running their normal content at all. So what we did is we created a menu that the elective teachers added ideas into that's on our website that students can then go to, and they can choose from that menu. And so even students that maybe aren't taking a PE class might be able to go in and find a PE activity, or students not taking an art class, find an art activity. So we made that available to every student, and really, we know some students are choosing some things and doing some things outside of that. And so that's great. And then we use a spreadsheet that the teachers track that two-way communication on. And on Fridays is the day for students to finish work. And we have kind of an 11 a.m. deadline for them to get that work in. And we're flexible with that, but certainly that we kind of try to set that up so that they have the afternoon to kind of just do some other things. And also we meet then as a staff. We have a staff meeting for an hour and a half approximately. It's been running on Fridays, and then staff has the other time to be able to collaborate as a content area or a grade level team. We are set up, our 3 grade levels, 6 through 8, each have 2 teams that we operate in. And so that's been really nice to be in teams because they can really track the kids well and figure out. And we had the first week, we had a really high percentage participation. We had only a handful of students that we'd have 0 or 1 contact from at least. And so we were able to then go through, contact those students, set up some things. Second week dipped a little bit. We kind of, knew that might be the case. And again, we did some follow-up, especially administrators, counselors. We're in week 3 now. And I think that, we're hitting the tough point of this year, I think. And I think some things that we came up with during our staff meeting last week is staff really coming to that point in their grieving that, this is not the same. It's not nearly the same. And they missed the discussion. They're holding Google Meets to throughout the week for students or doing office hours, and a student may show up and say nothing, or many students may show up and it may be really hard to get them to talk, and they're struggling with that. And then they're struggling too, just like many have shared, with that balance of content. I think, some of our teachers are really starting to get it and just paring way down to even doing, just as simple as holding a session on Google Meet with some questions each week that they can do. But others are very much still into wanting to, do that content. And from some students, they're getting everything and more, and that's great. But there are a number of students who are just becoming overwhelmed with that. And as we've talked to parents, the ones that aren't engaging as much, it's more they're trying as hard as they can, but they can't. And honestly, I get it. I feel very fortunate that my wife and I are both educators. So, we're receiving paychecks during this time. We're educated. We're able to help our kids at home with things, but even we're struggling sometimes to keep up with 3 kids and the work that they're doing and what's required and what's provided. And so, really, I know that this week, we're going to have some difficult conversations tomorrow as a staff about what are people doing and how can we pare it down, and how can we really think about the situations? Because even though I think we may know everything that a student has or that they could be participating, it's really hard to think that we know all the factors that go into it right now. A couple of things I'd share. I think with Google Classroom or with any LMS, there's notifications in there that go out to students on things like when assignments are set up with due dates. And we found out after week 1 that kids were just getting bombarded with emails, and that when you set up a assignment in like a Google Classroom, a lot of times the default due date or the default time for the day is 11:59 p.m. So they're even getting blown up at midnight by Google Classroom, thinking it's coming all from the teacher. And so we really had to try to clean that up. There's ways to shut off those notifications, and one of our teachers did a great job of putting together a little tutorial for students that we send out to them, and I think that's helping. But again, we're trying to kind of streamline that because it has been email communication overload. I think a couple other things. We're doing announcements each day. My assistant principal and I rotate the days. He's using Flipgrid, so he's getting some good videos back from kids on that, and I'm doing more of a live stream through Google Meet, and we post those, and that's been nice to kind of keep that connection. As others have mentioned, that's one of the things I miss the most, is connecting with the students and families and staff on a regular basis. And I think the other thing too, in learning about myself, I found it really hard to be on the screen so much. Screen time is hard for me, and balancing that has been really difficult during this, because as we all know, that's our only way really we're communicating. We're either looking at a phone to get an email or a text, or checking the computer on a Zoom or a Google Meet or other things. And so, really trying to balance that has been a challenge, and something that I know that, I don't enjoy. So that will be, but that obviously is necessary during this time to continue forward with. So those are a few things I really appreciate hearing a lot of the ideas, and hope that maybe I was able to share a little bit to the conversation there.
Thanks so much, Keith, for sharing that and all you're doing for kids and your staff. Tim, when you're ready, and if you need to take over the screen, feel free.
I think I will. Thanks, Steve. Originally, of course, I had said no to this, but then Steve offered as compensation to all the panelists toilet paper. So, of course, I said yes with that incentive. But yeah, I appreciate you putting this together for us. It's awesome to have all the middle level principals be together and to share, because our life is different. It's a lot different than the high school. I was out the high school for 14 years, and this is it's a whole different world here. So yes, I think I will share my screen if that's okay. So we started off, we surveyed our community really through Facebook and through email, internet and device access to kind of gauge where we were going. We're fortunate, like a lot of other schools, we're 1-to-1 with Chromebooks. So then we started a delivery device for any people that needed that. We had them fill out a Google form so that we could have them ready, because we had them usually housed here in carts. So we're able to get those out. We surprisingly had a high percentage of our people that could access internet, but we also have food service. So we took our bus hotspots to places that didn't have those. So our township halls deliver food, or our access point for food. And most of them have their own Wi-Fi that they said that parents and kids could come and use. But if they didn't, then we would take one of our bus Wi-Fi routers out there to deliver that. So, but we really started off with calling every student. So we separated that by teachers. We did it by our 4th hour. It just worked out best for us for that hour. We wanted to make sure that we contacted every single one of our kids. And that's when we found Google Voice. And that what's the biggest tip for us is if they want to call a parent, they text them saying, "Hi, this is Mr. Sanchez calling, or I'm going to call you in 2 minutes from this number," because you're right. When it's a number that they don't recognize, I don't answer a phone if I don't recognize the number. And so a lot of our parents were not either. But we really wanted to find out, A, how they were doing, but B, whether they could do online learning or if they wanted to have packets. We're a school of 480. We ended up with about 35 kids with packets. So we mail home packets every week, but the rest is all online. Our staff went to 9 total office hours for the week, at least 3 days, and it couldn't be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It couldn't be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So there couldn't be that 4-day weekend. We didn't want that for a kid to not be able to reach a teacher for close to 5 days if we did it that way. But a lot of our teachers did office hours every day. So that really did not end up being an issue. We also created a 2-way communication sheet just so that we could make sure we knew that in this time communication was going to be key, and to be able to document that to figure out which kids are going to need more help next year. So we went to Google Classroom. I've seen that in the side. It seems like a lot of schools are using Google Classroom. And like Eric said, it was a strain at the beginning for our kids because it was new for our teachers as well. And so everybody was posting assignments a different way. Some would post them in the stream, some would post them in the classwork section, some would give due dates, some wouldn't. So we ended up creating some video tutorials, but I think I showed this last week, but we now do it by week. And this, we've got the most positive feedback we've received has been switching to this. And we made it mandatory at the middle school, and our high school did not. And now high school next week is making it mandatory there. So they're releasing all of the week all at once on Monday. So all of the assignments go in at one time. So that way, because we have some kids that can't access internet until Thursday, or they can only access it Monday through Wednesday. So if a teacher posts something on Friday, they don't get that until the following week because we have a lot of shared families. So they only have access to internet at a certain time. But if it's all posted at once, then they can do it at their pace. And then I told them to put it in the order that the suggested order that the students should do it. So whether that's by day or by number, and this has helped out a ton. The other thing we found out is that kids were working, and through strained phone calls, teachers were talking to parents, and the parents, my kid said that they did it, and the teacher saying it's not turned in. Well, come to find out, kids didn't know how to turn it in. They did it, but they didn't actually turn it in Google Classroom. So there's 5 different ways that they can turn in an assignment. So again, we created a video, shared that with our teachers and our kids, so they understood how to turn in assignments. Also explained to teachers, even if they don't turn it in, you can still see their work. As long as they opened it, you automatically have access to it. So again, that was just a learning point for our staff. We did go to credit, no credit as well. And we wanted to keep it credit, no credit all the way through, but we talked today as a district, should we start giving incompletes eyes for kids that aren't working right now? And I believe that we're going to do that so that we can keep track. And that way, if a parent does look at Skyward's our management system there, that they would see that the kid's not working. We have 7 hours. We switched to a 7-hour day last year, so every kid could have 2 hours of English. And so we're worried about the time going through. So we really stress that, like, hey, less is more here. If you, at the minimum, if you give 15 minutes, that's almost 2 hours a day that a kid is working. And then imagine a kid that's a slower worker or a slower processor. And if we went to the max for everybody, that's going to be 3+ hours. And that's a lot for a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grader to do. We did training on, we made some videos for Cami. Again, if you weren't here last week, Cami is free right now. If you call them up, it's a PDF editor. It's very, very powerful, and it works great through Google Classroom, and you can have them edit. So if you got teachers that are old school and it's worksheets and it's packets and they're really struggling converting that to digital, this will be a good stopgap for them. They can make the PDF, send it to the kids still fill it out like they normally would, and they send it back. Screencasts, so the video tutorials, kind of like what we're doing now, and that's working well. And then we also use Zooms. I cautioned our teachers against doing a lot of full class Zooms. I told them at the beginning, hey, that's great, get them all in there. But what happens is you have a lot of issues. Kids have different, the Chromebooks aren't always awesome on Zoom. They're very glitchy. Some kids don't have the best internet in the world. And so having all those issues can be a problem. And again, maybe not every kid can get on all at once either. Instead, doing an assignment, and if you got 5 or 6 kids that didn't understand it, doing a Zoom with them usually works out better. And so that's worked out well. But we wanted to figure out who wasn't working, because anecdotally, I thought that we were getting a lot of work in. But then when I would talk to the teachers, they're like, boy, I must be off because I've got like 40 or 50% of my kids not working. So we finally got to the point where we just wanted to figure out what was what. And as the district, we're sending out letters this week to anybody that's not participating. We have a form letter that we're using mail merge with, and we're just sending out, I'm going to send out like 100 letters tomorrow. But to get this data, we had all of our teachers, and these are default names. I went in here and changed the name. So this isn't the same screen that we did, but we had all of our kids listed, and we had it by grade. So 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And if student 1 wasn't working in my first hour, I would sign up by teacher name and then what the class was. So, Baker, Mr. Baker, English 6, student 1 has not given any work. And what we could see right away is which kids had, and then this formula over here tells me how many classes that they had. So if it was for all 7 of them, we could find out really quickly that this kid is missing all 7 classes, or maybe it's just 1. And this also, now every teacher has access to this, so they can see, am I the only one that this kid isn't doing work for? And then we can reflect on why, like why is it my class that they're not working? And that'll help them. Also, this leads to, we have 7 hours. We don't want 7 teachers calling the parents, and the parents don't want 7 teachers calling them either. So any kid that had 5 or more, we listed on this points of contact, and then teachers are going to sign up. So that if a kid has 5 or more, we'll have 1 teacher that will be responsible for gathering information from the teachers and then communicating that home to the parent. But ultimately, the data that we got, actually looks a little better on here, the data that we ended up getting from this was a little bit better than what I thought. What was interesting is that our 5th graders are completing more work, and then it gets less work is being completed as the kids get older. So our 8th graders are at a 45% clip of 1 class. But as we look down, it's actually pretty encouraging. The 5 or more, it's pretty low. So as far as our complete non-compliers, we're only at about 8%. So for 8th grade, I'll just go to our whole district. So this is our whole district numbers. 485 in our school. We have 37% that are missing at least 1 class, not working in 1 class. But when we come down to, our real non-compliers, 5 or more, we're only at about 8%. And so we're going to celebrate that tomorrow at our staff meeting. Like, hey, we're doing a pretty good job of reaching our kids. Our teachers are rock stars. I mean, so you want to go back, like how do you do a good job here? You hire good teachers that care about kids, because we're lucky. We're blessed there where we had that. And then I broke it down to math and ELA, because let's face it, like those are the 2 big guns. And so we have 12% of our district not doing any math, and 13 not doing English, but only 7% that aren't doing both. So we're really going to reflect on these numbers tomorrow in our staff meeting and figure out why. Because we have a lot of kids that just aren't participating in 1 class. And if you got an elective class, PE, art, things like that, I understand. But we have some random ones, like a math 8 or a lit workshop 7. And so we're going to try to figure out why do we think that is. Is it maybe the setup, or what could it possibly be? So that's where we are. I think that's it for me. So
Hey, Tim, Wendy said that she's going to throw some toilet paper your way, so be ready for that. One of the questions that was up in the chat box was, what are you doing for incompletes?
Good question. Right now, it's just a communication for us and the parents and the kids. So if the student, we never finish a trimester with incompletes. It needs to be, every teacher has to run it through the administrator if they're going to, why is it an incomplete? So is it something we need to exempt them from? Did they have mono the last week? But in terms of this time right now, it'll ultimately be changed to a credit or a no credit at the end. We will not finish this trimester with an I. again, unless something, if a student themselves get diagnosed with COVID or a parent or something like that, we might leave it as an incomplete and then schedule for something for them to work on for next year. But right now we're more talking about the kids who are the non-compliers by choice. Those are the ones that will end up with no credits. We don't want anybody to end up with a no credit, ideally, that we can get a hold of them. We're hoping that letter will communicate it to the letter is overwhelmingly positive, like, hey, we know your kids aren't doing the work. They're at risk of summer school, at risk of no credit, at risk of us. Help us help you. Like, here's the numbers, here's the contact information. We want to help you. What are your barriers? We can help you with that. So we're hoping that letter opens up some more doors. So.
Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing that. It is 1:55, so we're running a little tight on time. So if you do have to leave, no worries, but I know that you're probably going to want to hear from Brad and Bill from Northville, as well as Mike from California, and then Wendy had a few closing words for us. So if you want to stay with us, feel free. If you have to leave for another meeting, we fully understand. So if you want to go ahead, Brad and Bill, let us know what's going on over there in Northville.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to be part of this discussion. We really appreciate the opportunity. My name is Brad O'Neill. I'm the principal at Meads Mill Middle School in Northville.
And I am Bill Jones. I am principal of Hillside Middle School in Northville.
So we are going to tag team this, two for the price of one. We did jot down some notes, and really that revolved around the focus question. So I'll start it, and then Bill obviously will comment on those as well. What's working for us in Northville at the middle school level? We really started this process on March 13th. So we're 7 weeks in. Our students' last day was March 12th. Teachers were together March 13th, and really kind of like I think Joe mentioned it in the very first thing they did is really provide some enrichment activities. So we did do that. And then we've really kind of evolved with 3 phases. We went into more of a weekly schedule after phase 1, phase 2. And then phase 3 really has been more content and curriculum driven. And we really have set up a schedule for students. It's a daily schedule. We're a 7-hour day. So we blocked it actually. So Monday through Thursday, they experience their 7 hours. There's 2 teacher office hours within that Monday through Thursday time frame. And on Fridays is an hour opportunity for students to get in small groups if teachers choose to. Teachers are live with them, they're available, or if they just want some individual help. And then the rest of that Friday is really department meetings. I have several coming up on Friday with departments, maybe a staff meeting and so forth. So we really keep that Friday open for teachers to collaborate and work and plan for the next week. The reason we did a schedule, a couple things. We are requiring teachers to do synchronous teaching, so it's live with students. And the reason we wanted to schedule was basically so they wouldn't overlap. So the schedule is set for teachers so they can schedule their synchronous activities with students during the week. They're really required to do 1 30-minute, but teachers are doing more than that actually. They may do it up to 2 times a week. But we did that for the teachers so it wouldn't overlap. I think the second piece is we wanted to set a schedule up for kids if they choose to use it and give them the option. If it's a schedule that families can work it in and they wanted a kind of a school day schedule, it's there for them. It's kind of like 1 through Monday, Wednesdays is hours 1 through 3. I think Tuesday, Thursdays is 4 through 7. They're about 60 minutes long. It doesn't mean that you're engaged the entire time for 60 minutes, but again, it's just that placeholder for students if they choose to get on a schedule. And actually, parents have really appreciated that because they've had the opportunity to get them on a schedule at home, but also with the caveat that they don't need to do that if it doesn't fit into their schedule. Bill?
Yeah, I would. Brad and I are on the same schedule, so I think it was important to us to try to give our kids opportunities to connect with their teachers. So on those Tuesday, Thursday times, there's the where we would usually have that last hour of the day, but on that 3-period day, there's a block of time built in there where teachers are expected to be available, so they don't need to just hang out on Zoom, but responding to emails, setting up a Zoom with a kid or a parent as needed. So there's a lot of frequent opportunities to really connect with our kids. As a lot of other districts have been doing, we are also kind of in the midst of monitoring who's showing up and who's not. We've also got, kind of a spreadsheet where teachers are chiming in and responding to who haven't they seen. We do that by subject. So if I see Brad O'Neill on the list, I can tell whether he's showing up for math or ELA and just not PE or all those kind of things. So right now we're kind of prioritizing our kids who have been radio silent, that we haven't seen at all. And I can speak to, in my building, that's like fewer than 2% of our kids that haven't shown up either for synchronous learning or for asynchronous learning. So initially we had teachers reaching out to kids so that parents were not getting, 7 to 9 emails wondering where their kids were. So reaching out to kids and just saying, hey, notice you haven't been here, anything we can do to support, anything that you need from me. And that prompted a lot of kids to engage. I think once they realized like, oh, somebody noticed that I haven't been showing up. And then now we're to the point where after those initial student contacts, then we're going to start reaching out to parents to say, hey, what can we do to support? And, there's a couple of surprises in there, but I think we're probably all finding that some of the kids who struggle to engage in brick and mortar instruction are continuing to struggle to engage in the online. And there's been some exceptions to that. But I think, for the most part, we know who our kids are and we know the families, we know who to reach out to. So that's kind of where we are.
I'd like to add also that we are weekly holding our MTSS meetings with support staff, which is really helpful when we're monitoring, activity with students. Our tier 2, tier 3 kids, we're still looking at them and still making sure that we support them. And so if they're not engaged, we are reaching out, we're talking as a team, and I know Hillside's doing that as well. Some of the things that we're doing as far as administratively is we had originally our teachers dump all their lessons into a resource folder through Google. We are primarily a Google Classroom school, although I know Bill has a couple teachers maybe using Canvas. I have one teacher using Moodle, but we use Google Classroom. So they put these in a folder. It's there for a teacher, it's there for administrators, it's there for parents, and so forth. And then they really do everything through Google Classroom, which has been really helpful. We co-teach with our teachers. I know that most parents are guardians, Google guardians, so they can see what's going on as well. I think that's very helpful. We've been able to, by co-teaching, sit in on live sessions with our teachers, watch the interaction with our students, so that's been really great. I know both Bill and I have held virtual PTA meetings. It was the largest attendance in a PTA meeting I have ever had, which was not surprising.
Likewise.
I think it was awesome. We've also had coffee chats with our learning community, and I actually had a Board of Ed presentation on Tuesday because it was our turn to present for the year on what we're doing at Meads Mill. So actually did that virtually, and that was kind of a neat experience. How are we monitoring and planning for implementation? One of the things that I want to touch on that I think is really important is the whole FAPE issue. We have a contingency plan for our special ed students and our parents. So that was developed by our special services. And the one thing I think is really important with that is it was based on goals, accommodations, and service time that we can provide for our kids when they're not in our school. One of the things that we felt is, what was going to be applicable. So we've done things where it's pretty consistent. It's extended time, it's having writing tools, test accommodations, and so forth, and then reduced assignments, and then audio, text to speech. And so that's pretty standard. It has to be agreed upon by the parents. I have seen those through other districts, but I think our district was seeking out some legal advice, because that was one of the issues about what we were doing as an entire district, was that equity piece and making sure that we're providing accommodations. So we do what we have. We have it's called a contingency plan for our special ed students. So I thought that was pretty important.
And I'll say too, our special ed teachers, one, in addition to being amazing, they are keeping up, a lot of the same duties that they've been doing brick and mortar. So they're co-teaching, they're jumping in on Zoom meetings. I was in one earlier this week with our cross-categorical teacher and our self-contained ASD program teacher. Though they don't typically co-teach on a regular schedule during a traditional day, they've been doing all of their Zoom meetings. So even on a high need student group like that, when I jumped in, both of the teachers were there. I think they had 2 or 3 parapros who were also, kind of Zooming in, and then multiple students from each class. And really it was focused on the student. You could hear a parent, kind of on the side and in the background periodically, but they were also engaged too. So I think it's great to have that high expectation for all of our kids.
Rethinking, adapting, and how do we know? You're talking about accessibility, curriculum, and grading. One of the things that I know, I don't think was touched on that I'd like to mention is teachers really pulling out essential standards right now. The fact that they can't cover everything for us, a 4th quarter, it's really important that we had a system in place. We use Atlas for curriculum, that's our framework. And so teachers really talking about what they're going to be teaching as far as content and standards, because it's important for that vertical alignment for next year. We don't want to get into grading right now and how we're grading, and that could be a whole nother subject. I know people have touched on that. But the sheer fact that we've really messaged the fact that we're trying to get these kids prepared for next year. And so those conversations vertically have to happen from 5th to 6th, 6th to 7th, 7th to 8th. Then we have 3 high school courses. All of our world language in 8th grade is high school. It's a high school accredited course. We have algebra and also geometry at the high school in the 8th grade. So having those conversations with those teachers at the next grade level for all of our content areas are really important, because what they're pulling out and teaching, they have to revisit it next year, what didn't get covered, and so forth. So I think that's the conversations we're currently having right now, which I think are really going to be beneficial as we prepare for the fall, whatever that might look like.
And kind of touching on the fall and those essential standards, I think we're all kind of waiting to see what does the fall look like, and trying to plan for that as much as we can without really knowing what we're planning for. But thinking about our current model, which is that, emergency distance learning, if we have to change from that to a planned distance learning, what does that look like? Because for the most part, and just for one element, most of our core classes meet 5 days a week for, 48 minutes. Right now, instead of offering 5 lessons a week, we're offering 2 lessons a week. And if that's going to continue going into the fall, now you're talking about really leaning down what are those essentials and what does that look like? And I don't know what the community response would be really to either side of that coin. Maintaining only 2 lessons a week and what that looks like for an entire school year, or trying to increase it to 5 lessons a week times 7 classes, and trying to maintain that for a year, because we did hear, some pretty strong voices saying, I don't want my kid camped out in front of a computer from 8 to 3 every single day. So I think if we get to that point where we know we're going to be in this situation, going back to school in September, what does that look like? And I think we're probably all wrestling with that.
I do, something I missed, I thought that our district did extremely well, is when we got into phase 3 now, we did send out a survey to our learning community. It got sent out to teachers, students, and parents, and really touches on academics. Is it too much? How are they feeling about things? But also an SEL component. Do they feel supported? And we got some initial data from that, and we looked at it at a secondary level. So it's interesting, and I think we're going to need that as we move forward in transition for the rest of the school year. So I was really happy that the district got in front of that, and we're going to have that, I think, wrapped up at the end of the week, and we'll be looking at that data overall. And we've had a lot of survey. We'll have a lot of survey data. The one thing I think is important, the district has created a task force for next year. Representation of all stakeholders about what next year would look like. And I think that's really important, because you kind of have to be proactive and be ready to either dial down or get ready for next year on however it will look. So I think forming some type of committee for that has been extremely important. And it has to include all levels and then the entire learning committees. I'm really happy about that. The one thing that I think has been very apparent for me, and Bill can add this, is just that whole message of empathy, compassion, and understanding as we go through this process. And it touches everyone, right? So as our teachers are really trying to find their feet, those best efforts should be praised. We've done that. But I've really been pleased with the understanding that we all have and the collaboration amongst our staffs to get the job done and kind of meet the challenges. And to be honest with you, the parents have been extremely supportive, and we're trying to be empathetic and understanding with them too, because every household there's something different going on, and so we have to recognize that, because we can't have biases that we had all year long, because just because a student may not have done the work doesn't mean that they're not attempting to at home, and that might be different for them. So, it's been a process. We certainly wish and hopeful that we're back in some type of normalcy next fall, but it's been a ride so far. So thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like what you've done is gathered feedback, and you're thinking systematically about how to support learning from the students to the parents to the teachers. So thanks for that. Mike is going to jump in next, and then we will go back and recap it with Wendy to final out here. Just know one of the questions out there is, will this be emailed? Yes, it'll be emailed to you. So you'll be able to listen back, backtrack, see each other's names as well, so we can connect each other with one another. So Mike, if you want to jump in. I see you came out of the sunshine. It's raining here in Michigan.
Yeah, it's actually I had to come in from the sunshine. My neighbor started doing a yard work, so I didn't think you guys wanted to hear weed whackers and lawnmowers in the background of my conversation. So first, I just want to wish all of you guys in Michigan, you guys are doing awesome stuff over there. Everything I'm hearing today is just outstanding. So I just want to commend you all for all the hard work and effort you're putting into your communities. A long way away from me, but again, you guys are doing some great stuff. So again, I appreciate you letting me crash your guys' Michigan party and learning from all of you and taking some stuff from you guys. Learned a lot from Tim today, everybody today. Tim, I like a lot of stuff you're doing. So again, thank you guys for letting me crash before I present. So also too, what we're doing is, again, we're into week 6 again of distance learning. We're actually doing progress reports this week. We are doing a credit, no credit kind of thing, kind of what's going on like you guys are doing over there. It sounds like it's kind of district to district. It's a little different from one to another. Basically, our district has decided that kids cannot get any lower grade than what their third quarter grade was. For us, our third quarter ended about March 13th. So if a kid got an A, and then they get an A for the fourth quarter too, without doing anything, which is again caused a lot of our issues with participation in classrooms, because there's not that accountability piece really there. So that's been a struggle. We've been focusing on a lot of our kids are getting Fs and Ds to raise their grades up, really focusing on having them understanding about how those grades will help them for 9th grade sports. If they do come back in the fall, hopefully. But again, that way they can understand like cheerleading and volleyball and football. They get that 2.0. The easiest way to get a 2.0 is to show up and do some work. So we've been really harping on that with our families and our kids. So that's what we've been really angling on. Also too, again, if you guys don't mind, I'll share my screen if I can find my link for that. Show kind of what a lot of stuff that we're doing very similar to what Tim is doing. This is our schedule here that we created actually in collaboration with the teachers at the school site and our district. And what we did is we kind of, we thought about the model. We actually tried out the model where it was done by subject, but that didn't go over well. It really was a struggle for our teachers and for our students to kind of follow along that middle school schedule. So we kind of went by period. I don't know if it's the best. I don't know if it's the worst, but this is just kind of what we came up with, how we do it. You can see that we built into every single day. There's office hours for teachers to reach out to kids, to find out what's going on, to reach out to them. And that's mandatory, as well as you can see too, that we actually embedded tutoring into each day as well. So it's another opportunity for kids to interact with their teachers and get more one-on-one support based on their lessons. And then and also too, on Wednesdays, we have our teacher collaboration, professional development. So that way, if they want to take a look at what's worked for the first half of the week, then they can fix it for the second half of the week. We didn't want to go for a full week with having things not working, and then on Friday we figure it out. So we kind of went with that route. And that's my day where I kind of jump into all these meetings from 8 to 11:45 with different departments to figure out what's working, what's not working, what supports they need from me, and how we make that work. So again, this is what we use at our school site. Again, I don't know if it's the best, I don't know if it's the worst, but just something that we've kind of come up with in regards to how we kind of to navigate this situation over here in our district. And then for accountability pieces, what we did is we actually had teachers, I had all my teachers anyways, create online syllabuses that are actually part of their Google Classroom. So it actually has the expectations as far as like when you're supposed to check in, how do you check in? If you check into a live meeting, what does that look like? All these pieces here, so that way there's no gotchas if their grades are not improving or if they're not getting the participation they're asking for. So every class has actually a syllabus based on their online learning, and it tells you about, again, what their grading is going to look like, their email addresses for the teachers so they can be contacted. And these are all embedded inside their Google Classrooms, because we wanted to make sure, again, that there was no misunderstanding in regards to what's happening, on distance learning. We kind of did the same thing like what Tim did. Tim's was way more advanced than mine is, a little more old school in how I use Google Sheets. What we did is we created a log for outreach that's shared with the teachers, and they go in and they put in what kids have not been showing up, what teachers have been doing it, what kind of contacts have been made by the teachers, what's the concerns from the class. And then I actually have my counseling staff and my office staff are making the phone calls to these families to find out what's going on. And then we actually have a code system in here to kind of explain what it is for each one. And on that very first page, it actually tells you what those codes mean. So that way, again, we're not having to overdo it with terminology. So like 3A tells a voicemail was made, 3B, they don't have internet access or Chromebooks. 3C, there's some stuff going on at home, they just can't get on. And then 3D is that there's some personal things going on. Again, we don't want everybody's information to be all over the place. So we want to kind of just streamline it to make sure that teachers do understand that there's more stuff going on than just distance learning. Because again, a lot of our families are struggling. And at least in my community, we have two families living in households together. There could be about 15 kids in the household all together, and they're not getting online. It's just not happening. So we have to have that kind of like Bill was saying before about the empathy and compassion to make sure we have that kind of piece going on. And then also too, kind of going back to talking about accountability. One of the things that I made sure I did is that we have, I have access. I'm actually a teacher in all their Google Classrooms. So I actually have access to every single, so it's like walk into a classroom. So what I do daily is I walk into their classrooms and I take screenshots of what they're doing that day. So now here's a screenshot of my science teacher doing some online learning there. Here's another one of another science teacher doing a lesson together with the kids. Here's a Nearpod lesson that's being done. Someone's doing a breakout EDU today, apparently. Here's a math lesson that's being done. Here's another lesson on the outsiders that's being done by a teacher on an online format. Here's a couple of chats happening with the teachers on Avid. So Avid's doing their thing. So again, that's how I go through and do accountability pieces, again, to make sure that stuff's not just being uploaded and then they're walking away. So I try to do that. And actually what I do is I have that set up so it's actually a folder, and I go in every day as part of my classroom walkthroughs. And I have distance learning folder, and I have every single day I've walked into classrooms to see what's happening during my school every single day that we have online learning. So again, just to help with that accountability piece, so that way we know that there is stuff happening out there and we can make sure that the kids are getting their needs met and their resources met. So with that, the last thing I really had to share with you guys, because I know we've been on for a long time, is don't forget that next week it's Teacher Appreciation Week. That's on next Tuesday. So right now, more than ever, those teachers and staffs need to be appreciated because they're doing a lot of work at home. Something I did was I created a Google form that I sent out to my community. And I'm having the community, parents and students write in what staff member they're thankful for, and then telling me why. And then I'm going to create a slideshow or document and share with all the teachers next week. So again, that they understand that they are appreciated for all their hard work. And again, makes it easy for me not to have to create everything. But again, though, it's just one of the small things we're going to be doing this next week for a Teacher Appreciation Week. So that's all I got. If there's anything else, please feel free to let me know, and I'll gladly share with everybody if they need it. So again, I'm good. So again, Michigan, thanks for letting me crash. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for sharing, Mike, and reminding us of teacher appreciation. And as I look at what all of you are doing, I'm realizing how incompetent I am in many ways, and it makes me anxious, thinking, oh, I could be doing this and I could be doing that. And I think what we need to remember is everybody's different. Figure out where you are and where your teachers are and go for it. So to close that out, Wendy, you're on.
Hey everyone, great stuff. I mean, super impressed, and I'm really glad that we're recording this because I think a lot of people could benefit from all the things that have been shared today. And some of the things I've been kind of thinking about is just like, what are we going to do moving forward? And that's what our Leader2Leader webinars coming up are going to be focused on. I'm like thinking, kind of, we have this opportunity right now where we're thinking about what is currently happening. So in some of our upcoming Leader2Leader sessions, we want to have sessions where we have teachers and counselors kind of be panelists and tell us from their perspective, how are things going? What would we like to see, moving forward? We also want to have a panel of students giving us their perspective on how this is going, and then a panel of parents. So our question for you is, would you like to see that done in a separate format, again, middle school separate from high school? Or do you think it would just be beneficial, regardless, to hear from teachers, students, and parents, if it was mixed high school and middle school? So if you could pop that in the chat for me and just let me know, hey, we really like this middle school only format, or it would work either way, just to give us some feedback on that, that would be helpful. The other thing that I just would really like to do is, and I'm not exactly sure if a Google Doc or something is the best for that, or a folder of some kind, but all of these resources that many of you are sharing, if you're willing to share them with others, like the survey Mike just showed, for example, for the teacher appreciation, that would be great. Or, the document you're using to capture student engagement, or contacts with parents, anything that you have like that you'd be willing to share. I'd love to start a document like that. And some of you have even said, something we've learned is we have to have posting done consistently, for example. So if we could just kind of start a folder of best practice, I think that would be something that a lot of people would benefit from, if we can just have something like that moving forward. So I'll work on that. And I'll just look forward to seeing what you put in the chat in terms of your feedback for how you'd like Leader2Leader done in the future, middle school separate or combined with high school. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate your time. And thank you, Steve, for your thoughtful facilitation today.
Thanks, team. We appreciate all the voices and all the listening and all the learning we're all doing together. Have a great afternoon.